A little quick addition to that story about Vera Lynn. She was being asked, "How do you live? How does a person live to be 100 years old? What's the secret?" And she's, "Well, you have to keep an active mind." And somebody said, "How do you do that?" She said, "You listen to a lot of radio and watch a lot of television news." So, a good plug for broadcasting. 22 minutes after 8 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310. KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 46. Did I tell you, I guess I did a few times, about my trip to Declo a few weeks ago, where I went to look at an old farmhouse that is being converted into a modern private lodge with all of the modern amenities. I mean, it's going to be top of the line. LED lighting and the most modern of kitchens and bathrooms, built for comfort for guests who are going to be coming and staying with the artist who actually commissioned the work, and his name is Robert Moore. He was in studio with us a few weeks ago, along with Russell Smith, the man who's in charge of the renovation. And Russell has a company called Western Visions Inc., and we've been telling you about Western Visions Inc. and how they could do the same work for you. And these renovations don't take forever. They're done in a matter of a few months. And all along the line, they keep asking you, "What do you think of this? What do you think of this?" It's not like you sign a deal and then you don't see anything for 3 months. Every step of the way, they're asking you for your input. They'll do residential remodels, additions. They do kitchen and bath, of course, a whole home redesign and retrofit, and occasionally even willing to talk to people who are looking to redesign a business location versus just a home. And if you'd like to know more, I've been recommending you check out the website, western-visions.com. That's western-visions.com. Coming up on 824, Bill Colley and Steve Millington will be joining me in a few minutes on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We're at 45. Dianne Feinstein is questioning Gorsuch again. She had one of the most asinine statements of the day yesterday. We're going to run that by the lawyer who joins us in studio next hour. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air.
Yeah, everybody keeps saying Russian, but the thing that hurt Hillary was Comey himself when he pretty much told the world that she was guilty as hell, but because Loretta Lynch had a conversation with Bill that he couldn't bring charges, and then when he did the Anthony Weiner reopening the thing, it made everybody in the public opinion call her guilty.
Yeah, and guilty she was. And I thank you much for the telephone call. Just beating up on Jim Comey because he doesn't always. I mean, he's not being political in any sense. I mean, he is doing his job. When he said that he didn't think Hillary should be prosecuted, that may have actually been pressure he was getting from his boss, the Attorney General at the time, Loretta Lynch. I think, though, the Trump administration is staying out of his way and allowing him to do the job that he's supposed to do. To sit here and think that he's part of his role in running the FBI, though, is to run interference for the President of the United States, that would be very dangerous. And we wouldn't want that. Even though we may not like what he has said and the totality of it, it's still not a very healthy approach. I'm joined in the studio by the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. I was going to say those were your knees creaking, but it's the microphone.
That's the microphones. I oiled and greased my knees before I left the house this morning.
My dad worked with a guy. They called him Brownie. His name was Francis Brown. And he had sore knees, and he started rubbing WD-40 on his knees every day. And he could scale ladders again and do all of this impressive work. And somebody finally said to the doctor, "Do you think he should be doing this?" And the doctor said, "Well, I'm not sure." It worked.
I read a page full of things one day about what we have discovered that WD-40 will do for you. I don't remember seeing joints but why not,
I was going to ask you a quick question or two about, I went to the afternoon session because I was delayed here after work Friday, but you went to the morning session.
Right.
Governor Otter's capital for a day was in Hanson. I wrote a newspaper column about it because for all the people who complain and groan about Governor Otter, my perspective was he answered every question everybody in the crowd had, and then he would say, "Does that answer your question?" And then if it, they wanted more detail, then he would listen and take that into account, which doesn't necessarily meet all the criticism I sometimes, get a lot of criticism from him, even from his fellow Republicans. And the other aspect of that was there were 70 seats there. I never saw more than 30 of them filled, and that included me. So I didn't see any more than 29 others filled at any one point.
We didn't have anywhere near that many on the morning session, Bill. I didn't take a head count, okay? But I'd be surprised if there was 20 of us in there.
So he answered every question everybody had, and he took time to do follow-up questions with everybody if they felt their question hadn't been answered. And basically nobody showed up, even though I mentioned it 3 times in advance on the air, and I think it was well publicized otherwise. So why do people gripe?
I don't know. I think that's the most interesting thing. In the morning session, we had 2 or 3 very interesting questions from people who lived in the Hanson area, and they were a little bit upset over the fact that people would move to Hanson to buy a home and then take their children to an adjoining school district to go to school. And they're taking all of the money out of Hanson and taking it somewhere else. And the governor said, well, yes and no. Then he explained to them that yes, from the standpoint of the state expenditure, which he rounded off at about $7,200 or $7,300 per student per year, will go with that student wherever the student goes. That's what we call the average daily attendance money.
Mm-hmm.
That goes with the student. But the property tax money stays in the home district. So if the residence is inside the Hanson School District, Twin Falls School District, Buell School District, then that school district gets to collect the property taxes on that property. Now, if the student goes to another school for their education, then that school district doesn't have the expenditures for the student. So net, the other school has a net deficiency because they have more students with less monies.
Now, we've got to take a short break in about 20 seconds. But I got a follow-up, too, about something you mentioned that he had been asked about in the morning, and he voluntarily brought it up in the afternoon, and that's the faith healing bill, which looks like it's on his way potentially to his desk, and how very conflicted he is about that. So we may get a chance to speak about that in a few minutes.
We probably ought to. Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting. That's a lose-lose situation, and any way you cut that one.
We've got more coming up. It's 8:30. Steve Millington in studio with us on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. Bill Colley with you as well. It's 46. Our studio guest, Steve Millington, he's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. We were just mentioning Governor Otter's visit to Hanson last Friday. One thing that he did bring up, I guess you mentioned it, was in the morning session, and then he mentioned it in the afternoon. He was telling somebody that we're in a bit of a quandary here and a no-win situation with the faith healing bill if it gets to his desk, because you either have to trample on somebody's religious liberty or you're going to upset the medical community, which says that, it is a pro-life issue to protect children despite what their parents believe in faith healing or not. The medical community says we need to step in sometimes. So he's going to, whatever he does with that bill, he's going to make somebody angry, and he referenced that in the afternoon.
He touched on it just briefly in the morning session as well, that it's one of those issues where there really is not a win-win answer. Everybody's going to lose on that particular situation. And the bill that's now progressing through it was coming through the Senate yesterday, is kind of a watered-down version of what they really wanted to begin with. But the majority leader in the Senate, Bart Davis from over in Idaho Falls, he just said, we just don't have the votes to pass anything else. And even at that, the committee vote was only 5-4. So it passed very, very narrowly. So it's not likely that this bill is going to have a real huge welcome when it gets to the floor of the Senate. And you keep in mind, we don't have any idea what's going to happen to it when it hits the House.
Senator Brackett's bill on castle doctrine got shot down yesterday, and one of his colleagues even went so far as to say, I came here expecting to vote for it, but I just don't see a need for your bill, and backed away from it.
I missed that one. The Garvey Bonds got shot down.
Been a bad week for him.
Wow, it has. Otter, you might have seen a little bit of the blurb on the television, the local television station. They mentioned that a participant in the thing asked about how come we can't raise any money for roads. Well, that was me. And I asked him, I said, why do we have such a difficult, demanding time trying to round up money to get roads? And he said, he gave the political answer, and you can go to KMVT and look at the blog. But it's a very demanding, really awkward thing. I listened to your conversation with Ron Nate on Friday.
Mhm.
And he basically said, we got plenty of money for transportation, and we don't need to raise taxes to do any of that stuff. I was going to call in and say, wait a minute, do you live in the same state that I live in? But then I decided, no, Millington, you'll get your chance to rebuttal that argument on Tuesday. Just leave it alone and let the other people call in, and you can have your turn later. And you know, I hate paying taxes. There is nobody in the world that hates taxes as much as I do. I mean, I hate. There's two things unequivocally that I can say that I completely hate. One of them is taxes. The other one is snakes.
Yes.
Any kind of snake. I don't care what it is. I hate them. So that puts the taxes in a kind of a rough situation. But there's a few things we have to take care of. One of them is roads, infrastructure. How are we going to accomplish the things we need to accomplish in this state if we don't have a good infrastructure? And that includes roads.
Yeah.
We've got to have good roads. I was mentioning to Benito every morning when I come in here, I come a few minutes early, and then I go check with Benito, make sure that my hair's combed straight, and we chat. And I told him, I said, I had an interesting conversation with a friend Sunday evening who is from Colorado. And they were complaining about the road situation in Colorado, and we said, it's interesting as you're going to Laramie and Cheyenne. There's a cutoff just before you get to Laramie that you can take down through the mountains and come out in Fort Carson, or you can go to Laramie and cut down on the interstate right there, I-25, I think it is. I'm not sure, but it's interesting that when you drive off of the road in Wyoming and drive onto the Colorado roads, you see a significant difference in road composure, construction, and maintenance.
We have a caller. Thank you for your patience. We've got about a minute before the break. Go ahead.
Yeah, someone should explain to those faith healers that God gave man the wisdom and knowledge to develop and invent medicine, and the faith healers should have faith that the medicine will work.
I think that's a good point.
That's a good point. That's a good point. When I was reading the article this morning about faith healing, I thought to myself, I
have been to a faith healer, but I still go to my regular doctor too as well.
I think there's the caller makes a good point. I think we have to exercise wisdom and judgment, and sometimes wisdom and judgment says get the proper medical attention. They can fix the problem, and if we don't bless them for their faith and their obedience, but gee whiz, sometimes you just need a little bit of extra help, and it's called medicine.
We have more coming up. Steve Millington joining us. He's been taking a little of that himself this week. It's 46 at 8:40. And Bill Colley, too, as well, on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Our studio guest is the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. His name is Steve Millington. He joins us in studios on Tuesday. Or studio, we have several, but he's only in one at a time. In studio on Tuesday mornings, mornings being plural. All right, we got that. I think I've got it right.
I normally hear I'm on Tuesdays.
Right, there you go. He boiled that down. It's 46 at 8:44. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And we have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Hey, Bill. Good morning. Good show as always. Regarding this faith healing bill, I'm against the governor signing that bill. we spend so much time in this state going back and forth whether or not we should have a constitutional amendment for a balanced budget amendment baloney. The Constitution, where does it say that we need to do that because some doctors might be offended? How come they're not offended when the millions of innocent children are aborted in this country? And after all, last time I checked, freedom of religion to practice one's religion is protected under the U.S. Constitution. As and who's to say your wisdom is supersedes that individual's conviction? To me, that's the point of freedom. Sometimes you're going to have people that truly believe and live according to the dictates of their conscience.
Well, thank you for the call. I think that, remember, when Governor Otter brought this up Friday afternoon, my gut feeling was he's going to side with faith healing because people, if you don't know his history, he was nearly Father Clarence Otter, and then changed his mind about seminary and ended up getting into business and then later politics. My gut feeling was when he was explaining why it's such a difficult decision, because he also told me we got talking about property rights. I brought up the fact we go see a really nice tourist site in Idaho, and you got to drive by some ramshackle house sometimes with an overturned, washing machine in the front yard. And I said, it takes away from the whole experience, the tourist experience. And he said, well, look, we can have laws about roadside dumping and littering, but he said, in Idaho, we've always believed that your property rights are sacred. And so when I heard that, I thought, when it comes to faith healing, I think he would be on the side of the faith healers.
I got that same feeling in the morning session, and I think his concern was that it's not going to be a win-win for anybody. It's going to be an awkward arrangement, regardless what happens. But I think his conservative mindset is that we really need to have people choosing for themselves and exercising their very best judgment. So I think if that one gets through and onto his desk, he'll probably sign it.
He also added, no one asked him about it, but he also added his thoughts about legalizing marijuana, which happened to be my thoughts, that we are generally in 100% agreement there. And he explained that his colleagues, his fellow governors in other states where this has happened, he said they all have regrets now that they did it.
Yeah, it's not working anywhere. In fact, last fall in the November elections, the Attorney General for Colorado was had cut a campaign advertisement for like Nevada and Washington, I think, and some other states. And I saw them, and he said, our incidence of DUI, driving under influence, and it's not just alcohol, it can be anything. He said has skyrocketed. We have got so many more teenage kids in the hospitals for drug overdoses, and he said it's just marijuana. It's just marijuana. And he said we can't get a handle on it. We can't get it under control, and we don't have any way to police, to enforce the law because anybody can do it.
We need to mention we got a caller coming up in just a moment, but I do want to also point out if you're having difficulty hearing this program, you need to get in touch with Dr. Christine Pickup, a doctor of audiology. She's located at Rupert at Mount Harrison Audiology. Why would you choose Mount Harrison Audiology? For independence. Mount Harrison Audiology is the only independent, locally owned hearing healthcare practice in southern Idaho. That means more choices for treatment than just one brand and lower cost. Trust your hearing to a certified audiologist. Call Mount Harrison Audiology for your appointment today, 208-312-0957. We'll get to our caller in just a second, but just a quick addition to all of that discussion. Dorothy Moon, who was on with us on the show yesterday morning, a state legislator, she's in favor of medical marijuana, especially for children who may have bad seizures or for pain relief, but not necessarily for the legalization of it across the board for recreational use. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air with Steve Millington and Bill Colley.
Good morning.
Good morning. I really agree with your last caller. I mean, we should have choices, and our choices should be our choices, not forced down our throat. And here's the good point. So if the medical community that aborts babies on a regular basis and doesn't even sneeze forces someone to treat their child for something that they feel that is in God's hands, who pays the bill? I mean, the bill is going to be laid upon the shoulders of the parents that didn't want to do it to begin with. So this is all wrong all the way around. The government shouldn't be involved. Now, if the medical community wants to get involved and say, this is what we could do for you, and this could be the outcome, it is still the parent's choice.
Well, that's a good question about who's going to foot the bill, and what if the child dies anyway, even with medical treatment?
Yeah, that's true. And if the parents make the choice that we're not going to seek medical treatment, we're going to depend on our faith and our God, and the child dies, is there some recourse there for legal action because they basically permitted the child to die? That's boy, that you talk about a sticky wicket, and that's about as big as it gets right there.
Want to thank him for the call as well. Coming up now on 10 minutes from 9 o'clock, Steve Millington, our studio guest. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. We're at 45. Bill Colley with you as well. Telephone number 736-0300. And caller, you're next. You're on the air.
Good morning. Hey, I was just wondering if anybody's seen any statistics regarding the number of children who die because they didn't get medical help versus the number of children who maybe died because of incompetent medical help. Just curious.
And that might be a good point to
that would be a good
brought
point.
up on the legislative floor.
I never thought about looking at the actual, here's the situation. Don't have any clue what it would show us.
What else are you looking out for as we get near the end of this session this week?
Well, there's one. Well, now this week is the goofy week. All the goofy stuff in the world shows up. We still have to battle the sales tax, grocery sales tax reduction and the offsetting.
And the governor's not in favor of removing that.
He made it very clear in our session in the morning that he didn't like that idea at all. And I got one comment on that. If we're going to take the sales tax off of groceries, and one of the arguments, there are many, but one of the arguments that they make is, well, good gracious alive, we take this stuff home and we prepare it and we eat it. We consume it for our life, well-being. Well, then why don't you take the sales tax off of the food that I buy at a restaurant? No, I didn't prepare it at home by my own hands, but isn't it kind of the same thing whether I prepare my food at home or whether I go to a restaurant and eat my food? I'm consuming something, am I not? And it's for my health and well-being? Okay, then if you're going to take it off groceries, you better take it off restaurants. And by the way, if you're going to take it off of groceries and so forth, then maybe you need to take it off of light bulbs and small incidental household repairs, like because that's for my human well-being and so forth. You can see that thing just goes on forever and it takes you nowhere. There's one other interesting little thing. It's not getting any coverage of any kind, so I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Well, I hope it does not go anywhere, but it's scary. And it's scary not only because it is on the agenda, but what is not on the agenda. The state of Idaho is seriously considering spending $110 million. Yeah, you heard me right. $110 million to purchase the Hewlett-Packard campus on West Boise.
My colleague Kevin Miller up in Boise at KIDO went off on that on their website yesterday.
Wow.
Saying if you want a small government, why do you need this big campus?
That's right. And I got news for you. If you build it, they will come. So if you've got a million square feet of office space and so forth, you know what your first goal is? Fill it up full of people. Yeah. Well, they say that they're renting facilities and so forth and spending about $12 million a year, so they could eliminate that rent and that would pay for the building. And then Hewlett-Packard is going to rent some of the space back, and so net they would have a zero cash outflow, and the facility, the $110 million would be paid off in 8 to 10 years.
Randy Staples hinted yesterday, too, that this campus is like trying to get through a mouse's maze to get there.
It is. It does not have the best access because it has been there for a long time, 25, maybe 30 years. and so the world has grown up around it, and it does not have the best ingress and egress. And so something would have to be done as far as getting people in and out of that facility. Here's the question that I want to ask. Did Hewlett Packard just simply overbuild to the point where that they need to dispose of some of their, quote, real estate, unquote, that they're not using it anymore anyway, and it's just collecting dust, and so we would sell the whole thing and then we'll lease back what we want? Or could it be something else? I wonder, are we paying enough attention to the fact that maybe Hewlett Packard is getting ready to bail on Idaho and on Boise? Why doesn't Hewlett
Someone is helping them out by just saying, we'll pick up the property.
Yeah, we'll buy the property, and so Hewlett Packard doesn't have any real estate obligations in Idaho anymore, and then a year from now they just say, oh, we've decided we're better off to do all of this stuff in Vietnam, Thailand, Taiwan, wherever, and shut the whole situation down. I know that it is no longer employing the high number of employees that it had 10 years ago. They have downsized some of that kind of stuff. Automation and robotics and has taken a huge change there. But it looks like to me the Department of Commerce and the Department of Labor would be all over that like stink in a barnyard. Why are they cutting back? And rather than the state of Idaho buy it and make it easier for Hewlett Packard to get out, why don't we find new companies to bring in jobs and employees and businesses into Idaho and fill that facility up with commerce and industry rather than government employees? And so I looked at that and I read it over carefully and I thought to myself, well, that's a real boondoggle, boys and girls, because number one, the state of Idaho does not need to be in the real estate business. Number two, what's Hewlett Packard? What's their game plan? What's their end game on this thing? And finally, why don't we just go find new technology businesses that can come in there and fill up the space, and we add jobs and we add economic activity and growth to the state. That one, Kevin Miller makes a very interesting argument that why in the world are we doing this? Well, if you look at the money we're paying in, the state government pays in rent for various locations. We could reduce all those rental costs because everybody would be located in a quote government campus, state campus, and we wouldn't be paying any rent, nor would we be paying any property taxes. And that hurts West Ada and Boise and whatever little municipalities are out there. We would have to do a lot of upgrading as far as roadways are concerned. I'm positive of that. So what's the real picture behind this? Why is anybody asking the question of, hey, Hewlett Packard, what can we do to help you increase your footprint in the state of Idaho? Now, maybe this is a wild one. Oh, this should get everybody excited as all get out. If you want to have a tax cut somewhere, I would suggest that we eliminate the corporate income tax rate in the state of Idaho. I don't have current numbers, but the number in like 2013 or 2014, out of a $3.5 billion corporate income taxes was in about the $150 million range. Really.
Business would like that and perhaps even grow more.
And maybe somebody like a Hewlett Packard would say to themselves, wait a minute, we can just take this particular subsidiary organization and move it into Idaho, and there's no corporate income taxes in the state of Idaho.
We'll see Steve Millington in a week, if not sooner. I want to thank him for coming by. Grant Lobes is on the way following news at 9 o'clock. Just a quick note, some colder weather on the way. We're not going to get out of this without a little bit more. If you have an issue with your furnace, you need to call the pros at Ramsey Heating and Electric in Burley. They'll come out and they'll get the job done right. They'll get it done right the first time. I'll get that out. I'm catching what Steve has. Problem-free cozy winters are found at Ramsey Heating and Electric, 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. The number, 678-0459. Ramsey Heating and Electric. They sell warm winters and cool summers.